Welcome back to Face the Nation. We now turn to our senior national and environmental correspondent, Ben Tracy. So Ben, just this week we saw several of the hottest days on record. How is America's infrastructure holding up to this kind of stress?
Yeah, these are certainly not records we want to be setting. And just to broaden this out, the UN's International Panel on Climate Change, which are the world's leading climate scientists, they say that we're likely living through the hottest period in the last 125,000 years. And this year in particular could be the hottest on record, and that is this double whammy of human-caused climate change, mainly from the burning of fossil fuels, combined with El Nino, which is the warming of the world's oceans, which tends to spike temperatures around the globe. And certainly we are seeing the impacts here in this country. We've seen these heat waves, mainly in the south, mainly in Texas, over the past couple of weeks that have really stressed infrastructure, including the power grid in Texas, which set records for power use during that heat dome event. And interestingly enough, they say that it was solar power, the addition of massive amounts of solar power in Texas, that really helped stabilize the grid during that. But overall, our cities are just not designed for this kind of extreme heat, which can buckle roadways, it can buckle runways, and certainly there are massive impacts on people. And it's not just extreme heat. This is also extreme rain, which is caused by climate change because a warmer atmosphere can hold more moisture. So when we do get storms like we saw on the East Coast in recent days, those storms can be more intense, they can last longer, and they can happen more often.
So to that point, Ben, I mean, the U.S. taxpayers are pouring billions of dollars into revitalizing America's infrastructure. Are they rebuilding based on the climate reality?
That's a great question because, I mean, we are about to spend hundreds of billions of dollars from that bill on new infrastructure all across this country. And a lot of people are asking, are we building that for the climate reality of 10 years ago or the climate reality for the next 20 to 30 years? Let me give you an example. We did a piece down in Galveston, Texas, where they're building this thing called the Ike Dike. That's named after Hurricane Ike, which devastated the area in 2008. This is basically a system of massive gates and sand dunes to protect the area from these massive storms. This could cost more than $30 billion, but it might take them more than 20 years to build it. So a lot of experts have come out and said, hey, by the time this thing actually gets in place, it's going to be outdated for the kinds of storms that we could be having 2 decades from now. So there are real questions about how we're spending money, and the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, which is charged with keeping the records on rainfall and helping the government decide how do you build things to protect communities and cities, and how do you build ports and bridges and roads. They are updating their materials now based on what they view as the new climate reality, but that data is not going to be compiled and done until 2027.
Wow. There are also these wildfires that I know here in the Northeast were complicating flights because of what was happening in Canada, but there are fires out west as well. Is that linked to this record heat, and when will it be under control?
Yeah, wildfire season now taking off here in the West, and we have a lot of fuel out here to burn because we had this crazy wet winter. So a lot of that fuel is now drying out, and that just becomes fuel for these wildfires. But the big story this summer obviously has been the fires in Canada, which really are unprecedented. You're looking at 20 million acres that have burned already, and that is directly due to heat and heat caused by climate change. They've had a very, very dry spring up in Canada. They've had record heat that dries out these forests, and then they burn, and obviously wildfire smoke does not know any sort of national borders, so that is a big impact for the United States. And there's an unfortunate climate feedback loop here. You have climate change that is making things hotter and drier. That causes fires. When the fires happen, these trees that are burning are releasing more carbon in the atmosphere. That actually increases climate change, just causing more heat and more wildfires. So it's a vicious cycle, and we know the way out of it. The scientists do say we need to stop burning fossil fuels, move away from that as quickly as possible to mitigate some of these worst impacts that we're now seeing.
Ben Tracy, thanks for connecting all the dots for us.
Thanks, Margaret.